Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm writing to what is the similarities and differences between Vedanta, Sankhya, and Yoga? Sad Dharshanas. Sure, I pronounced that wrong. So anyway, I've been looking for. Interestingly enough, is it Samkhya, Samkhya, or is it San? Maybe it's both. I'm not sure. I've been trying to look for that specific philosophy on all the people that I react to because I kind of want to learn more about it. All right, let's go and get started.
Esther Nadal asks, in the past I studied some Buddhism, particularly Zen. I've also recently started studying some traditional yoga and your lectures on Vedanta. Although I find some of the teachings of yoga practical, inspiring, and interesting, I hold a non-dualistic view of the universe, and I am very much drawn towards Vedanta. In your lectures, you emphasize that there is an important difference between Vedanta, yoga, and Sankhya. You also say that some aspects of yoga can be helpful at the beginning for the Vedantic seeker, and the Sankhya is the basis of yoga. I'd be very grateful if you could help me understand the difference and the similarities between all these philosophies, so that I can discern what tools of yoga are helpful to me without unknowingly getting out of the specific path of Vedanta.
All right, that's a heavily metaphysical question, but also practical. So here goes. What Esther is referring to are the Dharshanas, the systematic philosophies of Hinduism. In Hinduism, traditionally we speak of 6 Dharshanas. I have this voice in my head of my philosophy professor saying, Professor, I specifically remember Professor Parimal Patil at the Harvard philosophy department in one class saying, let us hear no more of 6 systems talk. That's the traditional way of talking about it, but he says, let's not hear any more of it because it is problematic in certain ways. But anyway, for our purposes, it will do. One way of looking at ancient Hindu philosophy is to look at the 6 systems. The Nyaya, the Vaisheshika, the Sankhya, the Yoga, the Purva Mimamsa, and the Uttara Mimamsa. The Purva and Uttara means the earlier and the later. The Uttara Mimamsa is also called Vedanta, of which there are many schools, and the school which we are specifically talking about is Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta. Now the question is that I am sympathetic to the non-dual Vedantic worldview, but I have studied Zen Buddhism, I have studied Sankhya and Yoga. I like the yogic practices, and you have also said that Sankhya is the foundation of Advaita, then yoga practices are useful for Advaita. It's not just that I have just said it, that's part of classical Advaita Vedanta doctrine. That Sankhya constitutes the first step in Vedantic inquiry, and yogic meditation practices are very, very useful for Advaita Vedanta, not just Advaita Vedanta, any kind of spiritual path. Yoga is basically the prototype, the epitome of all meditation practices. So here goes. One way of looking at it is that these 6 systems, you can divide them into 3 groups. One group, Nyaya Vaisheshika, another group, Sankhya and Yoga, and the other group is, the other pair is the Mimamsas. The Mimamsa literally means a reverential inquiry, Pujita Vichara, reverential inquiry into the texts. Now I will not delineate the systems, that will be like 6 systems, at least 6 classes to give an outline of what each is. But why these 3 groups? It's because these philosophies, the Nyaya and Vaisheshika, the Sankhya and Yoga, these are what are called Samana Tantra or sister philosophies. So is Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa, but with an important difference. The Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, they get along very well together. They are sisters who are very friendly to be with each other. But the Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa generally are sisters. They are sisters too, but they don't get along well with each other. They have huge conflicts, some huge conflicts between themselves. All right. The next point I want to make is that Sankhya and Yoga, being sister philosophies, or in Sanskrit Samana Tantra, they hold, there is very little disagreement between them. They have the same worldview. And what worldview is that? It's a very logical, very elegant worldview. We are awareness, consciousness, and everything else appears to us. So whatever appears to you, whatever you experience, this world, which we experience through our senses, which we experience through our scientific investigations, this world, including all the people and all the living beings in it and all the non-living things in it, from the tiniest particle to the largest galaxy and so on. This is the world. And then also our own body, our senses, our mind, the intellect, which we are using right now to say all these things, all of it, from the external world, from the furthest galaxy to this body, and indeed the subtle mind and intellect which we all take to be ourselves, all of that is not you, is not us really. All of that belongs to nature. In Sanskrit it is called, in Sankhya it is called Prakriti, nature. All of this is nature. Then what am I? I am consciousness. I am awareness. You are consciousness. You are awareness. This clear distinction between awareness and object. Under object falls all of nature. From physical nature up to subtle nature like mind and intellect, everything. Whatever can be experienced, whatever can be objectified is nature, Prakriti. And that to which all experiences happen, you, I, we are consciousness. So this is the fundamental principle of the Sankhya worldview, that it is a dualistic worldview. Notice, finally there are two realities, finally. There is consciousness and there is matter. There is consciousness, matter. Prakriti, which is nature, and Purusha, which is consciousness. In addition, Sankhya also says there are many Purushas, many consciousnesses, if I may so use that term. So we are all consciousness, but we are all different consciousness. Individual, separate from each other. This is called Bahupurushavada, many consciousnesses, many souls, many Atmans, many selves.
And with that in mind, real quick, it can be true, at least from my perspective. And what I mean by this is that when we create this pen, it is the same, essentially the same pen as every other pen created like it. Not all pens, like all pens that are created exactly like this, such to this exact model, make, brand, etc. All pens have the same design, the same ink, similar ink, and the clicking mechanism, the design, the material, etc. It's all the same, but all different and in different people's hands. And this is what I'm trying to say here is this is the consciousness where we all have consciousness. It's all the same kind of similar consciousness, but it's experiencing different things, kind of like a pen. So the only reason why I have this thought, and the reason why I can see this is a bit more believable to me, is because I can only ever experience my own consciousness. I cannot experience someone else's consciousness. I have no proof that there's only one consciousness. You know, the only consciousness that I know of is my own, and I assume you are conscious too, so therefore there is my conscious and there is your conscious. Just because if you, how do I say, like if you turn off, like if you're in a completely pitch black room, no matter where you look, it's all black. But that doesn't mean that, how do I say, it's the same area that you're looking at. It is the same, kind of the same blackness in a sense, but different locations. I know someone could argue, but it's all the same. It's the one blackness because there's no separation between the blackness. But it's, how do I say, it's all a matter for your, I guess, look in a sense. The blackness I'm looking at and the blackness that someone else is looking at, it's very similar but different. The experience is the same, but it's not the same blackness. So, and the way I would explain that is the fact that, again, assuming that our backs are touching, I'm looking this way and you're looking that way. You're looking at one blackness and I'm looking at another blackness. They are exactly the same, but it's still not the exact same blackness. I hope that makes sense. And that's how I interpret it. And that's how I interpret like consciousness, where our consciousnesses are exactly the same, but they're not the same. They're not the one consciousness. You'd say the blackness is all in one, but I don't know if all the blackness is technically all in one. So that's the reason why I guess I am a little bit more into the Samkhya, because of the and the duality of the worlds. Again, it's I can go either way on that. It both can kind of make sense. The dream analogy is so perfect that I could believe in Advaita Vedanta in terms of there is only one reality, which is consciousness. But my sorry, I'm sorry about that. I should mute my mic. But the one consciousness is just the one that I it's the most difficult to understand, not understand, the most difficult to believe, because I can't experience that, or I can't rationalize that, I guess, or can't, I don't know what it is. So the dream analogy perfectly explains the world, our consciousness, including perhaps the one consciousness to a bit of a degree. But that's under the assumption of a dreamer. There's this, so Brahman would have to be a deity. It's kind of difficult to explain. There's always ways to counter it. And I wouldn't doubt that in the earlier stages of Advaita Vedanta and a lot of these philosophies, there's many arguments for and against, and I'm sure I'm probably bringing some of those things up, and it's just, I guess it's just. I don't want to say it's just what you want to believe, but it's what makes the most sense to you, I guess. Hold on. Sorry, I had a cough. Advaita Vedanta makes a lot of sense to me. The one consciousness is the one that I struggle with. Samkhya Yoga, and one reality makes a lot of sense to me, but the one consciousness is, I struggle with. In Samkhya Yoga, the duality, of course, makes sense. That's how we all have always understood the world, and it makes sense as well. There's the material world and the consciousness, and then the many consciousness. That makes essentially what how we grew up kind of knowing. I mean, don't get me wrong. You never thought like, oh, I am the consciousness and consciousness alone, and the body's not me. We never really grew up thinking that, but we did grow up thinking that this is me, the body. And then when you start realizing, like, if I cut off your finger, did I cut you off? It's like, no, you cut off my finger. You know, when you start pulling back, it's like, oh, if I cut off your arm, then are you the arm? It's like, no, no, I'm not the arm. You start, a jnana yoga where you start thinking what you are not. So that's Samkhya Yoga makes a lot of sense too to me, and also makes, I guess, a more complete sense just because of the consciousness part, where yes, we are consciousness, and we are many different consciousness. Just because I have no way of tapping into your consciousness, and you could argue for the Advaita Vedanta where consciousness is unattachment to the world itself in general, like like just because I'm actually, our consciousness are one and the same exact consciousness. It's just that our brains, our memories, our emotions does not attach itself to the consciousness. It's the reason why I cannot see through your eyes. My I cannot experience your experience, because even though our consciousness is one and the same, the transmission of feelings, emotions, memories does not attach to consciousness. All consciousness does is just to be awareness. That's all it is. Pure, unadulterated awareness, untouched by the Maya or Prakriti. I'm trying to get familiar with those words. Amazingly, actually, geez, sorry, Purusha, the way I associate that with consciousness is a pure. Purusha, Purusha. Pronouncing is going to be terrible. I'm sorry. Pure is in there, so I understand Purusha to be pure consciousness. Prakriti has been said a few times, including with Acharya Prashant. I can understand that it's nature now. Hopefully, it will stick to my brain. So, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. To me, it just seems like what makes the most sense to you, because it seems like a lot of these schools are considered valid. I know Swami here has said, like, these different ones seem very valid, if that's what you feels right to you, and I can't disagree with him. It's really weird to say there's only one way to reality or one philosophy, and kind of not really. um, Especially with Samkhya and Advaita Vedanta, then Vedanta, then there's what is that, like another Vedanta school, like is like recognized Vedanta or something like that. I can't remember now.
So this is the Sankhyan worldview. Very logical and elegant, because if you look at it, that's how we experience life.
Yeah.
I am aware and I'm aware of stuff. That's life.
I'm aware of stuff.
That's life. What else is life? I'm aware and I'm aware of things, this, that, everything. Enjoyment, suffering, objects, body, other people.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I'm aware of stuff. I love that, actually. That should be on a t-shirt. I want that on a t-shirt so bad now. I'm aware and I'm aware of stuff.
This is life. Now, this goes against the Advaita, the final Advaitic understanding of non-duality. Advaita accepts this so far as it helps us to realize ourselves as pure consciousness. Sankhya helps us to distinguish ourselves from body and mind, from the personality, from the limited personality, and see ourselves as an impersonal consciousness, interacting with and through this body-mind. So we are this impersonal consciousness, also known as pure consciousness. Up to this, Vedanta is on board with Sankhya. And the Sankhyan analysis is very, very useful for Vedanta. Vedanta uses this analysis. In fact, what I teach sometimes, Drig, Drishya, Viveka, all of that is Sankhyan analysis, basically. However, Vedanta goes further. It asks the further question, what is the relationship between consciousness and matter? What is the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti? Sankhya will say, I told you, they are different. You interact with it, but they are different from each other. Vedanta will, I will not say how, but it goes further using reasoning, Shruti, that is the Upanishadic testimony, reasoning, Yukti, and Anubhuti, experience, to show that they are not separate. They are not separate. They are not distinct. Ultimately, there is one underlying reality which appears as the knower and the known, as the subject and the object. And that reality is consciousness itself. So what you call nature and object is actually nothing apart from that reality. And how so? That is the whole of the Advaita Vedanta. We will not go into it, but this is the big, big distinction. Sankhya is dualistic, Advaita is monistic or non-dualistic. And how dualistic? Prakriti Purusha, consciousness and matter. How non-dualistic? Consciousness only. Consciousness only. Even matter is ultimately nothing but consciousness in the Advaitic worldview. Yoga. Yoga takes the Sankhyan worldview, and yoga develops extraordinary meditation techniques. Even the Buddha learned yoga. And Sankhya, if you see the descriptions of what he learned from his teachers, you will find some kind of proto-Sankhya, proto-yoga there, which later, of course, Buddha and his followers, Buddhists over thousands of years, developed into very sophisticated meditation techniques. So yoga is very famous for its meditation techniques. What Vedanta does is, of course, it rejects the dualistic worldview of yoga, which is the same as the Sankhyan worldview. Vedanta says, no, Prakriti and Purusha, matter and consciousness are not separate. They are one reality, which is consciousness itself. What about the yogic? So in Sankhya, it borrows the Sankhyan analysis as a preliminary. From yoga, what does Vedanta borrow? Vedanta borrows meditation. The method of training the attention. How you sit, how you breathe, how you withdraw your attention from the world, how you turn inwards, how you settle down and focus and then be absorbed in samadhi. These techniques are universally applicable. Anybody who has a mind, a psychology, can apply these techniques. And so can Vedantists. Only Vedantists adapt it uh, for realizing the truth. You get actually you get a realization of the truth through Vedantic hearing and reasoning, and then to make it a living reality, to assimilate this truth, to transform this personality using this realization. That is what Vedanta does, using yogic meditation. So this is the difference. And the Brahma Sutras say, Etena yoga pratyuktaha, by this yoga is set aside. So what is set aside by Vedanta? Yoga as a philosophy, not yoga as a practice. The dualistic side of yoga is set aside. Specifically that matter and consciousness are separate realities. No, ultimately not. Also that there are many consciousnesses. No, ultimately there is one consciousness. And you are that. Good.
Hold on. Okay, so I hope you understand what I was trying to say there. I mean, both point of views are very valid to me. I don't know what is the truth. Is that going to affect me from being enlightened or attempting to be enlightened? No, not at all. This is my ultimate belief in terms of enlightenment. It's just the reduction of suffering, or not reduction, the elimination of suffering, essentially. Where you're sorry, God, I did end this up. I'm sorry. Where you no longer suffer but eternally bliss. And what I mean by this is that it's not necessarily what is the truth that matters, it's the fact that you're set free. Is that what matters the most? What the truth is irrelevant, because the truth doesn't necessarily set you free per se. Don't get me wrong, it helps, and so, to some people it does set them free. But ultimately, you can be set free without knowing the truth. And what I mean by this is that when you realize, it's kind of the truth. When you realize, kind of like, I guess, like the Bhakti Yoga is kind of a great example of that, where they don't realize themselves as essentially God, but they let go of suffering. They believe in a deity that will take care of them and will accept the results of their work, their labor, regardless of whether it's good or bad. They are willing 100% to accept it. So when you have that kind of mentality where you no longer suffer, you understand that people die, you understand that people go, you understand that when you put in work, it's not always going to be a good thing. Bad things can happen. When you realize these things, you suffer less, if not at all. And I think in that point you're essentially, I guess I wouldn't say enlightened per se. Um, I'll put that out there. I think you can be enlightened without knowing the truth. Perhaps not knowing the ultimate reality. Perhaps I'll say that. And if you want to make a counter argument, I am absolutely willing to listen. I put that out there just to see if someone can break that argument. I almost could, I almost can, but I really have to think about it. So I'm trying to break it myself too. But I would need help. Um, I understand in terms of Advaita Vedanta, the ultimate reality and ultimate truth is the fact that you're one pure consciousness. And that's it. But it's clearly acceptable in Advaita Vedanta, Bhakti Yoga, worship, the duality of it as a way of enlightenment as well. So clearly, not realizing the truth that you are Brahman Atman, but following this duality, generally speaking, supposedly leads you to non-duality. But I do believe Swami here and Sadhguru have said that that Bhakti Yoga is the quickest way to enlightenment, and I do believe it not to necessarily mean that you have come to realize your true self, but this duality of a deity in yourself. So, and being that the case, then understanding, knowing the truth is not the only way to be set free, or to be enlightened. Let me say that. Anyways, that's my reaction to this, and you have my questions already. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, the sign down below. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next vid.